I was born in Portland, 1947, June 30th, Emmanuel Hospital. My first band, I was in the 6th grade and I played string bass in school. But I don't remember all the names of the people, but there was, I think, 2 guitars, an accordion, and a electric lap steel. We played stuff that our music teacher, stuff that you learned in grade school, like Down in the Valley and folk songs, Little Brown Jug. And we played 1 gig for the Eastern Star ladies, and we each got a silver dollar in 6th grade. I wish I had that now. It'd be worth about $20. We called it a jug band. I had never heard any real jug band songs. It's called the Sajamole Jug Band, and that was a pun on the word Sarge, I'm only 18, got a ruptured spleen, by Phil Oakes, Draft Dodger Rag. Did you ever hear that? And I always carry a purse. I got eyes like a bat, my feet are flat, my asthma's getting worse. Anyway, that was Phil Oakes was popular then, and it was 66. That was at the Cafe Espresso in Southwest Portland, down close to the Civic Auditorium. And our boss was Walter Cole, who later became Darcel, the drag queen that still going. But yeah, I'm sure that Darcel would remember the jug band. I played harmonica and jug, but not all the time, because we had another jug player some of the time. And we also had a washtub bass player, a woman named Barry Golding, I think was her name. And she strummed the tub bass with a plastic banana. And Slim Chance was the guitar player. He played a 12-string harmony flat top. Stu Dodge played dobro. And then Earl Benson sang and played kazoo. So Earl was really good. He played his auto harp up here with finger picks, and he was a real good singer and knew a million songs. He was like a University of Portland music student that was really talented, and they did some prank or something, and they got expelled before he got his degree. You know, it was stupid, something with beer bottles or something, you know. Nowadays, nobody would even blink about that kind of stuff, you know. But anyway, so he was older than us, the rest of us. He was more of the Beat generation, and had a beard and kept his pants up by a piece of rope. Didn't drink alcohol, but he liked pot and do a little harder narcotics as well. Many years later, when I had a studio above Kelly's Olympian, I was downstairs talking with the owner, he didn't own the building, he owned the business in Kelly's Olympian. He was the son of the guy that owned the building. And Earl came in to get some matches for cigarettes or something. And I said, after he left, I said, that was Earl Benson. And the guy went, I used to play on his breaks at the Cafe Espresso. And I said, why don't you hire him? And he says, okay. And he hired him, and Steve Cleveland and I played backup for him, and he sang all these 20s songs. He had like a tenor voice, kind of high. But I don't know, we must have played a few months there, and every time he'd get his $50, he'd run down to the CD store and spend it all on CDs. because he had food stamps and a place to stay and everything, because he stayed in the Marco Hatfield hotel down there that was for, indigent people, I guess I'd say. Anyway, and he's long dead now. But I have some recordings of us doing that with him singing on a cassette. So I've got bins full of old cassettes that I've recorded over the years. Earl would sing stuff like, put another nickel in the Nickelodeon, or Sister Kate, or that kind of stuff. And then Slim Chance would have other stuff. He actually did stuff like Satin Doll and some stuff like that. He was a solo before we all joined together. The first jug band record I had was Dave Van Ronk's Ragtime Jug Stompers. So there was rags and stuff on there too. So we might have done some rags, although I think that was later when I got into Melodious Funk. When I got turned on to the Queskin records, the first two anyway. Got a lot of tunes off that, and then I started buying some records, and I had a Blind Willie McTell record, I think, and some other stuff I started getting some material off of. And Melodious Funk got a lot of stuff from the Washboard Rhythm Kings, some ragtime stuff. It wasn't really that long, because the guitar player got drafted, and then the jug player got drafted too. And probably didn't last even a year. We played for some political rally to get somebody elected. I can't even remember who it was. And then playing at the Cafe Espresso and Folk Singer, I think, Cafe, which was up on 10th and Burnside, north-southwest side of the street. But we didn't play hardly anywhere. And then during that time, I joined up. Steve Bradley and the U.S. Cadenza wanted me to join up, and so I did. So I was in two bands at the same time. So these guys, Bradley and Turtle, were the original two guitar players. The person that came up with most of the music was probably Bradley. But I sang more than he did, so I don't know that. And I was like the front with just the harmonica, so some people called me the leader, but we didn't really have a leader. I'd play the bullet mic, and I really didn't know what to do, because it would feed back, and we had horns instead of speakers for PA. And it just must have sounded really metallic. They weren't really a blues band. They liked some blues, and they liked me to bring blues to their band. And it was more of a Chuck Berry band, but also they kind of had stolen some riffs and stuff from the Great Pumpkin, older guys. That they were a local band that eventually made it down to San Francisco and played at the Fillmore or Avalon, I don't know which one. They had divergent people in it. Like the bass player was also a classical guitarist, and anyway, some of the folky stuff they would do, like Jack of Diamonds and John Henry, and do like modal stuff. And then there was one kind of raga that had a flute in it too. That was pretty neat. But unfortunately, I wanted more blues, and these guys just didn't listen to blues. You know, they sort of gave lip service to the blues, and I was doing different lip service. I guess I quit that band once, and then Turtle quit because he said, "Oh, without Ward, you guys are screwed." And then I joined the band back up, and they didn't want him because he was a troublemaker sort of with them. Of course, I was too, I guess. And that's when John Hendricks heard me playing and said, "Hey, come and play with me." He was doing a solo, but he wanted to, he liked my harmonica playing, so he wanted me to come play with him, and then Stu Dodge, and so we decided to have a band and called it Melodious Funk. And that was pretty close even to the 66, I think. Stu Dodge, who has always looked like that, never had long hair. Well, it got kind of shaggy occasionally. John Hendricks, and there's his J200 sitting over here, which Reverend Gary Davis offered to trade his to John for this one, but John turned him down. And that's me with the stuffed wallaby on my lap with the beard. I don't know if the wallaby has a beard, but I do. That was taken upstairs at the antique store of Mary Alice, Paul's Squeeze. Stu, he didn't play fiddle. He had played fiddle as a kid and learned how to, the technique and stuff, but when he played with us, he was either playing Hendrix's guitar and Hendrix was playing mandolin or banjo, or else Stu was playing mandolin or guitar, but not fiddle. And he was just fascinated with the mandolin, I guess. He probably would have been better at fiddle right away but anyway, he was good. I do have some recordings, but not many tunes. Coffee houses. I guess I was probably the only one underage still. 68 is when I turned 21. We opened for a Pentangle once. That was some name folk musicians from England, I guess. Don't remember their names. Stu Dodge would probably remember. I think it was 68. We went down to San Francisco and played on the Avalon in between the Charlatans and Quicksilver. And Dan Hicks was a drummer in the Charlatans at the time, hadn't gone on as his own unit yet. But he and John Hendricks were friends, and that's partly why we got to play on the break, because we went down there for a lark and fooled around. And we did crash the San Francisco Folk Festival. We were just hanging around with our instruments, and they were going, "Who are these guys? Who are these guys?" And finally they said, "Why don't you guys come up and play some?" And so we did, and we blew their minds. We used to sing this song. The PH Factor had done it before us, but we want some marijuana, we want some to the tune of "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." And then, so at the end of the song, the joints just flew. And plus, I saw a baggie come flying out of the corner of my eye, and I just snatched it, put it in my pocket. The other band members didn't even notice it until I showed it to them later in the car. But anyway, that was fun. We didn't do so well at the Avalon because Mr. John Hendricks got stage fright, and he was usually the voice and just total ideas and blah, 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 and he just like clammed up, and we didn't know what to do, the rest of us. John Brown was in the band, but he'd taken acid as soon as we got there, and he was just like a vegetable still after a few days. And the Cafe Espresso was, You know, first time I'd ever seen one, the big espresso machines with the eagle on the top and everything, and then a bunch of beatnik paintings on the wall and stuff, and lights way down low, and jazz over the PA record player, whatever. We didn't smoke a lot of dope in there. I mean, maybe in the Cafe Espresso we might have snuck a toke down in the basement or something, but it's probably more like going outside for that. It wasn't all as loose as many people would like to think it was. There wasn't dancing. It was mostly probably people that were stoned or coming down from something or a lot, you know. And then just fans of music too. We ended up in '68, we were both, as well as Paul, in Paint Your Wagon we were camped out in the hills above Baker, Oregon. And actually I got fired, and John Hendricks probably had just got there. He came late, and I didn't see much of him after that. And we did go to Seattle sometimes, the two of us, and we played actually once for a week in Vancouver, BC, at a place called Le Chat Noir. And that was interesting. Met some other musicians. Melodious Funk just sort of trailed off after that. Although I think that's sometimes when I would go to Seattle with him, we'd play up there, sometimes just busking or sometimes just playing for people that he knew up there, and they would like give us some money and give us a place to stay and everything. And it had some nice houses right on the bay there, and that was when the mothball fleet was there with all these old boat ships, and there just nobody on them, and they just loomed out there in the bay. I think it was '71 when the Cadenza also petered out, and Steve Bradley got another band together, and that's when Turtle and Billy Holtz and I and a guy named John Dominigoni started the Fly By Night Jass Band. I think it was '71. That was guitar, Turtle on guitar, me on harmonica and kazoo, and a little bit of jug, and Billy Holtz on washboard, and John D on tub bass, and Turtle and I sang, and John D eventually sang after he got over his stage fright. Turtle had a humazoo on a rack, and I had a regular kazoo. And we did a lot of harmonies, kazoo harmonies, and I had been listening to a lot of Fats Waller and stuff like that and other things, and turned Turtle on to Fats Waller and a bunch of other stuff, and 78s that I had, and a lot of it was just, you know, 20s, schmaltzy pop or funny songs and stuff, and some dope songs and Cocaine Habit and that kind of stuff. And some Louis Jordan, Saturday Night Fish Fry and that kind of stuff. And we were the first band at the White Eagle. They'd been open for years and years, but their first music, Billy talked them into having music, and we made like $20 a man or something. The place was packed, people standing out the door waiting to get in and stuff, because right down the street was the Storefront Theater, which we were also friends with and members of. Turtle and I had been in some of their plays, and we played music on the breaks there. So when we'd play there, and then when the show got over, everybody troop up to the White Eagle, and we'd start playing and drinking and dancing. And then that's when the Holy Modal Rounders came to town, right around when we were first starting it. So they were sort of our brother band. It seems like we opened for some name things, but since it was not a rock band, we didn't open for any notable guys like the Dead or anything. And then I took up saxophone and I quit the band because I was being insulted by the band members for playing saxophone. And so I walked off stage one night and didn't go back. They got John Hendricks to play for a few gigs, and then they just gave up, I guess, or he was too much trouble, or they got tired of trying to put it back together or something. I don't know. I was really bad on the sax for a long time, but later I got a Muddy Award, though, for sax. It was the first time they had a horn category, and since I had name recognition because my name was on the band, I was probably the only sax player they knew, so that's how I got that. But I could play, but I wasn't great. I ended up playing pretty good with Tom McFarlane's band. I do have a recording I think is my best saxophone solo recorded. Give me back that wig I bought you. Tom McFarlane singing. Well, here's a picture of the Coney Island Whitefish. I think it was like 74, maybe in 75. That was at Paul's shop. And so we dressed up in some of their clothes and stuff. And Johnnie Ward, Rob, whose name I forget, Rico Vicelli, Clark Huddleston, Davy Coffin, Paul Bassett. I was trying to make this look like I was playing it like a cello, but it looks like I'm trying to stick it up your ass or something. Tenor, banjo, guitar, washboard, tuba, guitar, saxophone, and harmonica. This is the stripped down busking version, although sometimes there was only 3 of us. We played on the street a lot, and with a tuba and a banjo and saxophone, we drew people to us a lot. Davey, the guitar player, didn't play with us that much on the street. But so Davy Coffin, Clark Huddleston, Rico, Johnnie Ward, with my saxello. That was at the Saturday market when it was first at the Import Plaza at the very beginning of it on Northwest. Davy Coffin, probably the same day. He's still alive. He's hanging in there. He lives out in Selwood. Davy Coffin was a great ragtime picker. He may still be, but I mean to go over there and buy him a beer one of these days. He's got his own house, so he was a worker. He was a tree planter and all kinds of other stuff. There he is again. And me, Johnnie Ward, and John Brown with the washboard and a jug in his other hand. That was at John Brown's place in Vashon Island. Another Davy Coffin playing a dobro. Well, that was a friend of the woman I was living with at the time. Anne McGregor is her name. I was a member of PH Phactor that one time that we played a gig with Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, but Hendrix wasn't in it then. I don't remember exactly who. Nick Ogilvy and Brown, I think, were the main ones, and Steve Mork was the jug player, and he was trying to learn electric bass. They had a guy from San Francisco that was going to be their manager, but his stipulation was they had to become an electric band also. And so Paul just sort of got bumped out because he really wasn't a drummer. He tried his little heart out, but and the bass jug player didn't make a very good bass player either. It's just a whole other thing. That was his dream, to get them that he could make them, because they all had great personalities, just amazing, and looks and hair, but it was not to be. I think that's basically it until maybe the Shark or the Eagle Riding Papas, and I was playing guitar by then. I had already figured out harmonies or progressions and knowing 1-6-2-5 regressions and that kind of stuff, because I started off learning to read on the saxophone, but didn't keep it up much. Yeah, I had been playing solo. Well, had been playing in the Bond Street Blues Band. I'd been living in Astoria through the 90s mostly. But then I'd come in on Tuesdays and work at Really Good Stuff for a while, and then go play at the Mock, and that was right before 911, I think. Anyway, I had mostly learned to play guitar on stage in Astoria at the Voodoo Lounge. I had every Thursday there for a while, and I was recovering from Hep C and playing those gigs, and then when I came back to Portland, that's when I started playing on the Tuesdays and getting a little money, and then the band started forming around me. Yeah, it was Doug Marks and Klaus Almroth and Walter. Doug Marks had just started playing out in public, and actually he paid me $50 for a guitar lesson. I'd tell him, no, don't play that part. That's a mistake, or a thing that you can't play if you have a band, because it's a little thing on the end that throws a band off for the time. So don't play that extra little curly Q thing on there, or stuff like that, and give him tips for that kind of stuff. And then he came around and started playing, and yeah, everybody liked it. And then we got rich. Then I got the Shark Skin Review, which is still going on. Started at the same time playing different nights at the Mock. And then Whit was in that for a while, but I got Hank, this other friend of mine, and he's been playing with us ever since. Plus now we've got every first Saturday at the Mock. And I did have a band called the Coolarators. That it was just 5-piece, Whit, Steve, and I, and Bill and Fred. I think Fred Ingram, and I was playing guitar, and Whit was playing guitar also, and I had harp on the rack and stuff too. We played over there at Beaterville for a while. We've got some of that recorded on video. Anna's band, Pops and Honey, sometimes, and I think that's about it. Probably played there a dozen or more times. Well, I played there with Bond Street once. I played there with Lauren a couple times. Once on one of the stages and once on the cruise. Just the two of us. I played on guitar once at the Blues Festival with Whit as a duo in the acoustic stage. I'm on the record that we made, one song of each band. It was a time when, really early on, when John Lee Hooker was the headliner. He wasn't on the record because legality and everything. Yeah. I can emote better on that. I'm playing chromatic too now, and I'm working on a lot of different keys. Figuring out on my own, I took one lesson from a chromatic jazz player that Goldfarb brought to town, and I had it on a cassette, and I don't know whatever happened to it. You know, I didn't seem to get a whole lot out of it. A lot of it was from records, and listening to old Jug Band fiddle as well, because I was playing the high end of the harmonica a lot, and so I could bend those notes around and play rags and fiddles and fiddle tunes and stuff that most people weren't doing. I just listened to it long enough that I could start to remember it. Played the hell out of Muddy Water, the best Muddy Waters, and the best of Little Walter, but I really didn't. It was hard to find. Like, yeah, that Little Walter record. There was no such thing in town. My son's mother ordered it for me for Christmas, but you had to order anything like that back then. A lot of people that I heard were rock bands. Like, one of the really good harmonica players was in Manfred Mann band, and then I liked the little bit of playing that the Stones did, and John Lennon did a little bit, you know, and that was all I could find around that time, until I got listening to Pat Patee on the radio. If you stayed up late enough, at like midnight, he would play a blues song, played like Little Walter playing Blue Lights or something, stuff that just went, wow, you know. Only person that I remember hearing much at all where there were two people, and one of them was called Triple. Ludwig Kamenita III was his real name, but he went by Triple, and then later T. Dwarf, he went by that. And he was an okay harmonica player and played guitar and harp on a rack, but I didn't really learn from him. And then the Great Pumpkin had a harmonica player, and his name slips my mind, but I didn't learn from him either. I was kind of guy people were coming and listening to. Like Paul DeLay was real young when he was listening to me. It's like four or 5 years before he started having a band. I would see him at gigs occasionally, not all the time, and he had a jug band too at first, but I don't remember the name of it, and I never heard it. But also the John Dominigoni, the tub player that was in Fly By Night, had been in that band with DeLay, but hardly any other jug bands. The new improved Juke Savages came to Portland, but there was only 2 of them, and apparently when they're in San Francisco, sometimes there's as many as 30 that show up, but anyway, that was just one night. Went to San Francisco, I went and went to an open mic and played solo harmonica and played Temptation Rag. And it has like 4 parts to it. And so, and then I was so shy, I just turned around and walked out the door. But this guy came after me and said, "Hey, I like that." And he was from a band called the Cleanliness and Godliness Skiffle Band. During that time, there was it was a put together band that I was in for one night, opening for B.B. King at the Crystal Ballroom. And the guy that was renting the Crystal Ballroom then, Mike McGorn, was a drummer. So he put a band together to open, and it was a really good organ player named Mike Parker, who's now deceased, and a guitar player named Pete Olette, who used to be in some of the early Louie Louie bands in Portland. He's probably well known as anybody that was. But I didn't hardly know any of the other. I never went and saw any of those bands, except maybe in high school, and I didn't even know who they were. I never saw Paul Revere and the Raiders or any of that stuff, or the Kingsmen. Although I played with the drummer that had been in the Kingsmen later. Oh, anyway, the guy didn't know how to advertise, and it was like 50 people showed up for B.B. King. And so sort of everything got cut a little short, but we got to go up in the crow's nest and hang around and sit around and talk with B.B. King. And I know Jim Meesey was there for sure as one of the audience and got to come up with us. And so yeah, that was cool. And then the Cadenza opened for him too, I think, and yeah, at the Bullfrog Lake, Bullfrog Blues Fest. It was 2 years of it. And the first year we opened, it was Jefferson Airplane, and then the second year was the Grateful Dead. Yeah, my friend Hartley said, "Wow, I saw a great guitar at the flea market." "Well, how much was it?" "I don't know." "What was it?" "It was a big metal guitar with a resonator." I didn't know it had 3 resonators in it. So I got the number of the boss of the flea market, called him and said, "Do you have the number for those 2 girls that had that guitar?" He goes, "I think so." He either dug it out right then or called me back and had it. I called them and went and bought it for $600. This must have been maybe even in the 80s. A round neck one was worth $10,000 around the time when I got this. It was a gift in a way, so I'm not going to sell it. I'm not used to this heavy railroad track looking slide. went and saw Bob Brosman once, and I told him the serial number, and he said, "That sounds like a 1930." The serial number is 1894, I think. Oh, here it is. Yeah, 1894. Just come to think of it, that'd be a good band name for me. Lip Service.